Should runners lift weights? Or is it a waste of time compared to spending that time running instead? I have gone through the evidence on the subject and I found it really fascinating what difference you can make in very little time spent if you manage to do it right. But as a coach and physio, I've seen that most runners actually have a completely wrong approach to weightlifting if the goal is to run faster. In this video I will talk about if strength training actually makes you run faster, how you should approach it, and by the end give you an exercise that studies has shown can improve your running economy a lot, and it requires less than 30 minutes of training per week to get those kind of improvements. First of all, I wanted to find out if there actually was evidence supporting that strength training improved running performance. I found this systematic review of the topic from 2008 that included 5 studies, and all those studies showed a clear performance boost from strength training. 2 of the studies showed a 2.9% performance boost when running a 3 km and 5 km all-out test after a period with strength training, which might not sound like a big number, but when it comes to running performance, it's pretty huge actually. Because if we convert that into seconds, that would basically mean that for someone with a 20-minute 5K personal best, they would be able to get a new personal best with a 35 seconds margin after implementing some strength training. The other studies included in this review reported an even higher number of 4.6% improvement when measuring the running economy on a specific pace. In a more recent systematic review of the literature from 2018 that included 18 studies on the subject, they concluded with this. Resistant training leads to general improvements in muscular strength, running economy, muscle power factors, and direct performance in distances between 1500 meter and 10,000 meter. Such improvements were not accompanied by a significant increase in body mass or signs of overtraining. Reading that last bit is really interesting because I see so many runners being afraid of building a lot of muscle mass from weight training and therefore becoming a slower runner. But if you approach it the right way, that for sure doesn't need to be the case. I will talk more about how you should approach it later on. After going through the evidence, it might sound obvious that all runners that care about running faster should start lifting weights. But it's not that simple, because in most of these studies, the intervention group that implemented different strength training protocols into their previous training is compared to a control group where they just continue training like regular, so they don't add any more training. So one could argue that if they just took that time spent on strength training and instead put that into more running, they would have had the same improvement, or even better. But looking into these studies and how little time they spent on strength training in many of them, I found it quite unlikely that you would get the same improvement from just adding that time running each week. And also the positive thing with the strength training is that the injury risk would likely be higher if you took the same time and just added more running compared to adding the strength training. So after going through the literature, I'm pretty convinced that some sort of heavy strength training with weights make a difference. And there's a good reason that most high-level elite runners seem to incorporate at least some weightlifting into their weekly training schedules. Still, when I surveyed my audience of runners here on YouTube, out of the 3,000 answers I got, 35% answered that they don't do any weightlifting at all. But how should you do weightlifting and what kind of exercises? First of all, what I see many doing wrong is that they have too light weights and do too many repetitions, doing around 8 to 12 repetitions. In my survey on my YouTube channel, 48% answered that they do 6 to 12 repetitions. And if you just want a performance boost in your running, studies have shown that that might not be the right approach. Doing between 8 to 12 repetitions is great if you want to build muscle volume. But as mentioned, the thing is that we runners don't want big muscles if we want to become faster, because that will only make you a slower runner. runner. What you really want is strong muscles, and it has been shown that lifting heavy 80 to 100% of how much you maximum can do for one repetition, and just doing 1 to 5 repetitions of this builds great strength without building bigger muscles. So I think this is the main thing many can start tweaking if you're looking for a running performance boost in your weightlifting. But of course there are also hybrid athletes that want to be big and run, and then being on 8 to 12 reps can of course be a good idea. Another thing to think about when you start lifting heavy is to have proper technique to not injure your back and so. So it can be a good thing if you're new to weightlifting to start off with easier weights and just learn the technique before you start adding heavy weights that will really challenge you. Even if you just do 5 repetitions, it's supposed to feel really hard. Then you will get a great strength boost in your running specific muscles. I will go into a specific really time efficient science-backed way you can train that I have used myself for several years. But in general, the best way for runners to approach weightlifting is doing it as mentioned with heavy weights, few repetitions, and of course exercises that use your main running muscles, like different variants of squats. I found this really interesting study many years ago that I have based my own weightlifting off, and the reason I wanted to highlight this particular one is that they showed an incredible improvement of running economy on very little time spent training and just doing one single exercise. The intervention group in this study did 4 repetitions of half squats, which basically is a regular squat with weights and only doing it to about a 90-degree angle in the knee joint. And they did these 4 repetitions all out, basically lifting as heavy as they could for 4 repetitions with a 3-minute rest in between. They were supposed to do it 3 times per week, but the group averaged to do it 2.5 times per week during the 8-week intervention period. So basically they spent a total of 12 minutes of training, including the rest, doing one single exercise 2 to 3 times per week, and still had an incredible running economy boost of 5% in just 8 weeks time. I found it really cool how potent training is in general, and that little time spent even on highly trained runners like they had in this study can make such a clear difference. I think that is a problem in general with training, that people don't realize how potent it is, and that very little training can make a huge difference, especially when it comes to strength training. You don't have to do super many lifts and be in the gym for hours to get a great performance boost. I did an interesting test on this topic on myself last year, where I did a little experiment where I went from doing no upper body strength training at all to doing an average of just 6 minutes per day for 30 days. And in that short time frame, I went from being able to do 2 pull-ups to 10. That will probably not make me a faster runner, but it's clear that if you can have the same improved strength in running related muscles, all these studies suggest that that makes us able to run at the same paces with less effort, needing less oxygen, and basically allowing us to run faster for a given distance. I don't think it's the most fun to do strength training myself and lifting weights, and like most don't have all day to spend on training, so when I found out what they did in this study, I was hooked, and in remaining years as an elite athlete I tried to implement it and have lately started doing it again. I also added a slight tweak to their protocol, and I think it makes it even more effective. So often I do these workouts after a short easy run as a warm-up, and then I do the half squats with heavy weights for 4 repetitions times 4, just like in the study. But then I add a calf raise at the end of each repetition, so I also get great strength stimuli for the calf muscles and Achilles tendon, that both are important to be strong and stiff, both for injury prevention and performance boost as a runner. It would be really interesting to see a study that implements this small extra movement that basically takes no extra time. And if you want to make it into a bigger strength training session and add some stability exercises as well, here are some really great body weight exercises that you can do that strengthen the muscles around the knee. Train smart, have fun, and I will see you in the next video.